U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates presented his department's base budget proposal for fiscal year 2010. Headlines around the world referred to the budget as a massive overhaul, with the Wall Street Journal carrying the headline that the budget had been, quote, gutted, with expensive weapons programs taking the hit. Nonetheless, the SPADE index, which is composed of stock prices from 55 of the largest defense contractors, shot up 3.4% upon receiving Secretary Gates' announcement. In the words of the index's director, Scott Sacknoff, for everything they took away, they added something else.
Well, despite the fact that they have made some cuts or some proposed cuts in a number of weapon systems, this budget is actually larger than any budget that the Bush administration ever proposed by about $20 billion or about 4%.
That being said, some high-profile programs did get the axe, including a new set of transport helicopters for the president, which cost $13 billion, certain costly missile defense programs, and the F-22 Raptor fighter jet.
Most notorious, the one that's getting the most play, is the F-22 fighter jet, which is a program that's been around under a different name in development since before the end of the Cold War, since 1986. It went into production in 2003, but it's so complicated, so expensive, about $330 million per plane. It's never been used in Iraq or Afghanistan because it's really inappropriate for those conflicts. Lockheed Martin, the behemoth of them all, is going to be, assuming this all goes through, it'll be losing the F-22 contracts, but the Obama administration is talking about accelerating production on the Joint Strike Fighter, which is the alternative, next generation fighter to the F-22.
I will recommend increasing the buy of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter from the 14 aircraft bought in 2009 to 30 in FY10, with a corresponding funding increase from $6.8 billion to $11.2 billion. We would plan to buy 513 F-35s over the 5-year defense plan and ultimately plan to buy 2,443.
The F-22 serves as a good example of the difficulties that lie ahead for Obama in getting Congress to approve cuts to expensive weapons programs.
This program has had, I think, the most impressive PR campaign in history. I mean, it's just amazing what they've spent on, full-page ads and TV spots, and they pulled out all the stops to protect this program. And the Pentagon has itself tried to protect this program by installing, pieces of the production line in 44 of the 50 states. Virtually every congressional delegation has some stake in this plane that we don't need.
New priorities include the fulfillment of Obama's campaign promise to greatly expand the number of troops, as well as an increase in the purchasing of further unmanned drone aircraft. This increase in drone purchases will be controversial abroad, as the planes, used frequently in Iraq and Afghanistan, have been utilized over the past year to make regular bombing runs inside Pakistan as well. Ostensibly without Pakistani government support, these attacks have resulted in numerous civilian deaths. It was President Obama that was the first U.S. politician to suggest the drone attacks inside Pakistan, back in 2007.
If we have actionable intelligence on al-Qaeda operatives, including bin Laden, and President Musharraf cannot act, then we should. Now, I think that's just common sense.
Earlier this week, the Pakistani government rejected a U.S. proposal to move American troops into Pakistani territory and reiterated its opposition to the drone attacks.
We did talk about drones, and let me be very frank, there's a gap. There's a gap between us and them.
On Monday, anonymous U.S. administration officials told the New York Times that they would be increasing the frequency of drone attacks inside Pakistan. Secretary Gates' shift in priorities, with the goal of making the U.S. more suited for what he calls irregular warfare and to bring an end to unnecessary spending, makes no mention of the Pentagon's global network of more than 700 foreign bases, whose maintenance is believed to cost roughly $100 billion per year. Should the budget be successful in passing Congress, there will be some contraction in military hardware production, but can that industrial capacity be put to use for domestic purposes?
They have to get rid of some of the practices that in military contracting, because security is a need above all other needs, premium is put on high performance, at whatever cost. And when you're working in commercial markets or civilian markets, you've got to think about lowering costs, and they're not very good at that. But I've also looked a bit at, what are the jobs that are needed to make something like an F-22 versus what are the jobs that are needed for, say, as you mentioned, wind turbine production. And, just in terms of, the job categories that the Labor Department divides up everybody's job into, there's all kinds of crossover between the job categories for production of the F-22 and for production of some clean energy technologies, and so there's a lot of potential there.
While the effects the proposed changes will have on the U.S. military's capacity can and will be debated, Gates made it clear that the military's stated reason for being will remain unchanged.
This year's budget deliberations focused on what programs are necessary to deter aggression, project power when necessary, and protect our interests and allies around the globe.
One of our objectives will be to project American military power where it's needed, and so that begs the question of where that's needed.
One potential answer surfaced at the end of the budget press conference during a question to the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
I just hosted my counterparts in the Mexican military last week up here. We worked through several areas where we're going to start to cooperate in ways that we have not done in the past, both at the service level for training and then at the operational level with the Commander Northcom for support in the drug conflicts that they're working their way through, but also for general support in their ability to defend their country.
Endless wars, abuse of powers, declining living standards, and the climate change crisis. The stakes couldn't be greater in the U.S., and with your help, we're moving our news operation to Washington, D.C., where we'll focus on money and corruption. For example, big oil and arms companies shape American economic and foreign policy with far-reaching effects on the lives of ordinary people. With allies in government, trade unions, the media, and in think tanks, they're a hidden hand that controls the commanding heights of American politics. Taking on the industrial military complex is what real change requires. Even former presidents and high administration officials have said so. But corporate television news treats such positions as marginal. Uncompromising journalism requires questioning assumption, interrogating structures of wealth and power. Corporate TV news just won't do it. Only a news organization that's truly independent can tackle such issues with courage and tenacity. And we'll take on corporate TV news live. You'll watch TV news with our panel of writers, journalists, scientists, and historians. You'll be able to join in by phone, webcam, chat. Together we'll discuss and debate what's the real story and take on the myth and the propaganda. But this is only possible if you support us now. We need to prove that a viewer-funded model works. So if you want the real news, we need you now. Please click on the donate button and give generously. Now's the time to decide if you want the real news to thrive.
Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute at therealnews.com.